Good morning, everybody. Welcome to John Moran's Win the Day podcast. John is gone today, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to sit in for John this morning, who will be returning tomorrow. For those of you I don't know and haven't met, I am Julie Morris. A little bit about me. I was licensed in 96, and I've been coached since 99, and now I am a broker in Scottsdale, Arizona. And my encouragement to you is always to stay in coaching. Like to introduce the usual suspects, Mark and Destiny. If you guys want to briefly say who you are.
Well, ladies first.
Okay. I am Destiny Powell. I am with Keller Williams Emerald Coast out of Destin, and I've been licensed for about a year and a half. I am really excited. I have my biggest closing of the year today.
How exciting.
And I'm just so honored to be on the show with you guys and learn and give my perspective as a new agent.
Awesome.
Thanks, Destiny.
Well, I am a realtor, associate broker here at Keller Williams. I am a productivity coach and business coach, and I also run a team. So I've been doing this since 2015. Have had the good fortune of being a team leader of offices, general manager, and now get to coach great agents and lead a great team. So that's my background.
So, and just for you guys' benefit, one of the things that, obviously with Mark being a coach, and I've been a mentor for many years, Destiny is a great example of somebody who listens and is coached and is kicking butt in a tough market. So that's kind of the point of the Win the Day podcast is no matter how many years you've been in this business, you can always learn and surround yourself with people who are doing things that you want to do or you want to get better at. Be careful about who you choose, but definitely surround yourself with people like that. So, and then to just launch into, basically today, we're going to talk about why hire a realtor. I'm going to back up and do something that John does and tell a little story for an example. We're all good at something, probably many things, but better in some areas than others. And when I was young, I grew up water skiing. When I was 2, on my dad's shoulders, and then standing on the skis. And then when I was 5, learned to ski on 2, slalom, barefoot, all those things. So I got kind of cocky because I thought I was, better than most everybody at that. And I would look at any kind of water sport and say, I can do that. I can do that, and I can do it better than anybody else. And a couple of years ago, I'm out at the lake with my younger brother who, I've taught a lot of people how to ski. Mostly they just learn how to get up on 2, but some learned to do 1, and my brother learned to barefoot, both my brothers barefoot. But anyway, we're wakeboarding, and I've wakeboarded before, but it's been a few years. And in case you can't tell, I'm in my 50s, and I'm not as agile and fit, and probably think I'm a little bit better than I am. And we're wakeboarding, and I'm trying and I can't get up, and I can't get up. And I'm getting frustrated. And finally, I'm willing to listen to the advice of my younger brother, who I taught to barefoot. And he gives me one little tip, like set the board on the water, let the boat pull you up, and just stand. I know that sounds real easy, but I did what he told me to do, and boom, I popped right out of the water. I could not believe it. I was like, wow, if I can do this, anyone can do this, right? And that's kind of the point. Sometimes we look at things that people do and we say, I can do that. Not only can I do that, I can do that better. And as realtors, a lot of people look at what we do and they say, that person showed me a few homes, they opened a few doors, they used a template to write a contract, and they showed up for an inspection, they showed up for a walkthrough, they got a big, huge check, and then they handed me the keys. I can do that.
Yeah.
I can do it better, and I can do it for free. So the point I'm making here is that's how a lot of people look at real estate. And that's what they see. They see that we do something that's pretty darn easy. And as realtors, we're providing a professional service. We're consultants, we're guides, we're coaches, we're serving them. And so today we're going to discuss not just why, but how do we demonstrate our value? And sometimes we have to show them or talk about some of the things that might knock you off the top of the mountain. Like, for example, how are you going to get inside the houses? What are you going to do if the buyer doesn't deposit their earnest money? What happens if the appraisal comes in low? Can you guys think of some challenges? Destiny, what challenges have you had when, can you think of a buyer that has been challenging? An example. Have you ever had a challenge in real estate?
I have. My goodness. I had one this weekend.
It's so easy.
Upset with me. She called me early yesterday morning before I could even go to church, yelling at me because I made a mistake and I owned it, but she was not happy. She threatened to sue me and fire me and everything. And I had to diffuse myself and then diffuse her and say, hey, this can be fixed. This is an easy fix, but I can't fix it while you're upset with me on the phone. Let's get off the phone. Let me fix the mistake and I'll call you back. And we got it handled, but she was not happy at all.
So what was the problem?
Managing emotions.
So the problem was we had a listing go live on Friday, and in the MLS you set it up for the start date and the expiration date. Well, I did it for a year out, and instead of putting 2025, I put 2024. So it expired in one day. And she called me, I've lost a day of my home being on the market. And what the hell is going on? This is your company. Who do I need to call? And she was not happy. It was an easy fix. Got it back up and going and fixed everything that she wanted it to and then some. And so she's much better now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Mark, what are some challenges you've had? I mean, I know you're really good at your job, so maybe you've had none. As realtors, it's kind of hard to remember them.
The funny thing is I always say that your number one job as a realtor is to manage your emotions, number one, and number two is to manage your clients' emotions. And so, I think through the issues related around inspections and how many times I've had to talk people off a ledge because they don't know what something is. And you realize it's a small little fix, but it could have imploded an issue. I've encountered those issues where, hey, we got every last dollar out of the sale by a lower appraisal. And I like how that's said is, hey, look, we have a price reduction. That means you got Mr. or Mrs. Seller, you got every single dollar out of the sale. Mm-hmm. It's not as much as you had hoped for, but you maximized here. So, a big piece of that. And I think also for the FSBOs, a simple question is, how are you screening the people you're letting into your home?
Mm-hmm.
People don't realize how much pre-screening and such that we do to bring the qualified people into a home that they, I would maintain that there's a whole industry, a whole country that has looked at our career and said, oh, all they do is open doors and they're overpaid. Let's change the whole industry and drive the cost down because you guys are overpaid.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, when you start to ask the question, okay, so let's say we're talking to a seller, how do we find out if the buyer is qualified? Mr. Seller, how are you going to discover whether if they're paying cash or if they're getting financing? How do we know that they can buy this house? Mm-hmm. And what do you do if they write an offer and they want to do $1,000 earnest money? Do you see any problem with that? What's the problem with that? And you get 30 days in, 45 days in, and they cancel, and now and the seller is right, and the buyer loses their earnest money, so they get $1,000. Is that worth the 30 days, 45 days you just lost? Asking some of those questions. What can go wrong? What can go wrong with, how are you going to prepare your home for the sale? What do you think needs to happen? And generally, if you look at all athletes, whether it's, golf, swimming, driving a car, basketball. All professional athletes have coaches at every level, Olympic level, professional level. They all have a coach. And the reason why they have a coach, which is what we are, is because they can't see what they're doing wrong. They can't see what they can't see. They may know the fix, they may not know the fix. So, when you walk through someone's house for the first time for a listing, they have it the way they might know some things. Oh yeah, I have to pick this up, I have to pick that up, but they can't see what we can see in terms of, here's how you stage your home. Here's how you make it look more attractive. Here's what a buyer is looking for. Here's what's happening in the market. What do you do when the inspection comes back? I mean, can you guys give some examples of inspection items that have thrown off the sale, or some solutions that you've had? I mean, think of an inspection. What can go wrong with an inspection? What are some problems and solutions there?
Destiny, you had an interesting.
Oh man, I did. And that's what's funny, is because you try to prepare your seller for it. Hey, this inspector is going to come in and find everything, and it's still not enough. We had a electrical panel box, the Challenger boxes, they've gone out of business, so those have to be replaced. And then the biggest one was hurricane clips. This house should have had hurricane clips when the new roof was put on, and they were not put on. They had to come pretty much rip up the roof to put new hurricane clips on, so the house was insurable. And that was a nightmare. And we lost a deal, went out of contract over it, went back under contract after the repairs were fixed. But those inspectors, they'll get you.
Mark, any inspection problems for you?
Just a few. I mean, what's interesting, and it varies from state to state. I moved here from Mississippi, and in Mississippi, we had foundational issues. We had what's called expansive clay, or you might hear it called Yazoo clay. We were down to the week of, and new construction, beautiful home, but when we did a soil bearing underneath the property, we realized that there was expansive clay just right up underneath the property. And so that was one of those situations where we actually terminated the contract 3 days prior to, and the guy was under pressure, and we had to find another property. So I saved my guy so much money right there. It's deflating. Yeah, we're so close, but got to step back and say, he wouldn't have been happy 10 years from now when the doors wouldn't shut and the house was cracking. So many things that can happen like that.
And see, and that's, like you say, it's not just realtor knowledge, it's area specific knowledge. If you're moving into an area and you're a buyer who thinks that you're going to be able to figure things out on your own, and this is where we need to ask the question, when we have buyers and sellers, how will you handle the situation of expansive soil should you run into that? Mm-hmm. And as a listing agent, you can say to the seller, how do you intend to handle repairs? Because people say, I'm selling my house as is, we're not doing any repairs, that sort of a thing. And one of the things that I offer with my listing, when you hire me, is we will do an inspection with a professional licensed general contractor prior to putting it on the market. Mm-hmm. That way, you're going to discover all the things that will come up in an inspection, and things will come up. And you can choose to fix those things ahead of time using the Band-Aid method, because you're on your way out as a seller, fix them so that they don't come up. So instead of a buyer, if a buyer has a choice between, bronze, silver, gold, or platinum when the repair is being done, they want the platinum. But if it doesn't come up on the inspection, mm-hmm. there's no repair to be made. And that's how you demonstrate your value as a realtor, is all these little things that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. How do we, get them to recognize that they have a problem? Now, you don't want to give them all the answers in your listing presentation so that now they have the knowledge, mm-hmm. but you can ask them the question, how will you solve this problem? What's your intent here? How will you market your property? With buyers, let's talk about money. How do you know what you qualify for? How are you going to find out? So it's just, instead of telling them, here's all the things I'm going to do, you can ask them the question,
Right.
Mhm.
Well, there's a saying that is authorship equals ownership. If you just talk at them, they're going to just hear it as you. But if you raise the questions and they arrive at that conclusion, they're going to own that. And that's where we can differentiate ourselves as ones who can solve that problem, because now they feel the problem. If we just talk at them, they're not going to feel that.
Well, especially if there's too much information.
Yes.
You
Well,
know.
you know, what I've found is good lenders, good realtors, they skate to where the puck is going, not to where it is. Because if you're skating to where the puck is, you're too late. And so a big part of this is solving the problems and being aware of them well in advance. You're a broker, I'm a broker. Probably the same, very similar exam. Most of the exam wasn't law, it's can you think through a problem? And that's what's tested in becoming a broker is here's a problem. Now figure it out.
How do you solve it? Who's right?
That's
You
right.
know, they give you all kinds of scenarios, and you can see both of them being right. And you can't just side with, and that's the thing. What if you're on both sides of a transaction? I don't know. Does Florida allow that? A lot of states don't.
Yeah, we are considered transaction brokers at that. It's still a sticky wicket. You got to be careful.
Yeah, we're able to be on both sides. You can't represent the buyer if you have ownership in a property and you're the seller, because obviously you can't represent someone who isn't you when you have interest.
Yeah.
But you, as a brokerage, we can have an agent on both sides of the transaction, and agents can be on both sides of the transaction. So you have to figure out, how do you represent both sides? So, and that's another question when you ask a for sale by owner, how are you going to handle a situation with a buyer, and you can come up with all kinds of different situations. Like, what if they decide not to close the day of closing? What will you do? See, and we all know the contract. We all know that there are safeguards. We all know what to do in that situation, issue a cure notice, and then this happens and this happens. But when you have somebody who thinks that there's no value to hiring a realtor, there's a lot that we do. So,
well, and I do think that there's the other aspect of, if you're a for sale by owner, you'd be wise in hiring an attorney. And where's your liability insurance, just in case something does go wrong, because you have a heightened likelihood of being sued if something goes wrong, and you have a heightened likelihood of something going wrong through a for sale by owner process. Those are things that you've got to look at. If the deal falls out, the attorney who's been looking over the paperwork still gets paid.
yeah.
How well versed are you in the contract? Because if you're compensating a buyer's agent and that buyer's agent is coming, they can just tie you in knots because they know the contract better than you. Are you prepared to be on the side of negotiating a contract of which you're just asking somebody, hey, can somebody give me a copy of this? You don't know the contract.
I'll just download the template and I'll just use it and I'll fill in the blanks. I can read, I can fill in the blanks. And Mark, to your point, if you have an attorney and you're doing for sale by owner, for example, what do you do with multiple offers? And let's do the math. Okay. So if you would have hired a realtor, let's say you get 6 offers and now you're sorting through the offers. You have to pay your attorney by the hour to go through all of those. And you get it under contract and you get 45 days in, and then the buyer loses their job and it falls out. Now, what are you going to do, Mr. Owner? Oh, and how much have you paid the attorney at this point? By the way, as a realtor, guess when I get paid? When it closes. So I will negotiate with 6 offers, get you to the finish line, hopefully get you over it, be able to keep that earnest deposit, whatever the thing is, depending on the situation, guide them, protect them. And they don't pay us as realtors until we close. So All of that, we're at 6:20, but just to point out that if we ask the question and start to, demonstrate some of the problems that do exist and happen frequently, different with every transaction, which is why we're always learning.
Mm-hmm.
If we can ask our buyers, our sellers, how will you do this? How will you do that? How will you handle multiple offers? How will you hold? What if we get into the escrow as the seller and the buyer hasn't deposited their earnest money yet? And now they want to do an inspection and they have the inspector scheduled for tomorrow, but you don't have earnest money receipt. What will you do in that scenario?
Mm-hmm.
Like, as realtors, we know what to do. That's an easy one.
Well, and I think that to your point, what I would encourage everybody to do is sit down and say, where could everything get off the rails? Where are the problem spots? And then sit down and write out your questions.
Mm-hmm.
Think through the questions that you can raise when somebody is questioning your worth and your value, and raise those things and demonstrate, hey, there's more to this than let me put you on a drip or let me just put a sign in your front yard. There's a lot more to this.
Yeah. Are you going to just let people walk through your house without you there?
Right.
What will you be putting away? Do you know what it is that people generally will pick up when they walk through the home? How do you go back to someone if you find something missing or broken? What if the inspector breaks a window and, or let's say the buyer says, I'm not going to hire an inspector. I know a lot about houses. I'm going to do my own inspection. And then they come in and they can't get a window open and they break it. They turn something on your hot water heater and they break it. How are you going to handle that, Mr. For Sale by Owner?
Mm-hmm.
Well, generally that buyer, and they didn't deposit their earnest money, and then they cancel. What are you going to do? The only thing you're going to do now is a lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
Because an inspector has insurance. They obviously know how to do things, and they're going to pay for anything they break. So, like you say, Mark, raise some of the questions. How will you get through this scenario? Come up with 2, 3, 4 scenarios for both buyers or sellers. So depending on who you're working for, whether it's a buyer or a seller, a number of solutions to problems, but present the problem and let them think it through. So
I love that.
Mm-hmm. I do too.
What do you have to add, Destiny? What are your final thoughts?
Ooh, my final thoughts would be, learn through each transaction so that you can be better for the next one. I've learned through those bad inspection reports and things that one of the first things I go look at is what kind of electrical panel box do you have? That way we can be prepared for what's to come. What is that inspector going to write up? And I can prep them on those things. And I think that shows our expertise and allows them to trust us a little bit more during the transaction. So just learning from each transaction, I would say, to better help and serve.
And it wouldn't be a bad idea to do a few little white papers that you could send as in your pre-listing appointment or your pre-buyer. If here are 3 crazy scenarios and how we avoided them and why you should hire a realtor. Think through those things in advance.
I like that.
Yep, that's a good idea. Different things for different scenarios, but presenting problems, and I think unique problems. Maybe one common problem that they might expect, but really unique problems only because they always think that it's going to go smoothly. And the reality is you're always going to encounter bumps.
Yes.
And it's our job, we're the pilot of the plane, to steer through and around the storm the best we can and land the plane safely. That's what we do. So anyway, just thanks everybody. And tomorrow John will be back to run the show and bring his great humor and tell us stories about his high school reunion. Maybe he'll tell them, maybe he won't. But today, let's go out and win the day.
Sounds good. Bye,
Thanks
everybody.
so much, Julie.